fractions and decimals. If the division ended or terminates when the remainder is 0, then the decimal is called a terminating decimal. Terminating means end or stops. So if you have a decimal like 3.2 and it stops, there's nothing else after it, that's considered a terminating decimal. Sometimes we see decimals that continue on, so 3.267 and continue on forever with the number being 7. Those are called repeating decimals because the number 7 is continuously repeating over and over and over again. And so that's why we put this bar above the 7 to show that that number is repeating. We can translate fractions into decimals by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So for example, if we have a fraction AB, we can turn that into a decimal by dividing A divided by B, and that's going to give you a decimal for your answer. Pause the video to try the examples below. You want to turn these fractions into decimals. So let's take a look at the first one. It's 7/8. So you can turn this into a decimal by dividing your numerator by the denominator. So we look at this and we say, how many times can 8 go into 7? It is 0. So when we do out the math, we have 7. We add a decimal point and a 0. So now we have 70. 8 can go into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. With 6, we can add another 0. So now we have 8 goes into 60 7 times. We have 56. With 4 left over, we can add another 0 to make this 40. 8 goes into 40 5 times. And this is considered a terminating decimal because now this stops. So we add our decimal point up top. So our answer is 0.875 is our decimal for 7/8. Now we have the example of 4/5. So we do the same thing. We divide our numerator by our denominator. We are unable to take 5 into 4. So we have our 0, we carry down the 4. We add a decimal, so we add our decimal up top and a 0. 5 goes into 40 8 times. That's now a terminating decimal, so our answer is 0.8. Let's take a look at a few examples of repeating decimals. So the first one here is 5/12. So if we try to divide the numerator by the denominator, we're trying to take 12 into 5. We know that that's not possible, so we carry down our 5. Now we look and see how many times can 12 go into 50. 12 can go into 54 times, and that gives us a 48. With 2 left over, we have another 0. 12 can go into 20, one time. So then we have 8 left over and 80. 12 can go into 86 times. And this is going to give us 72. And we have 8 again. So as we can see, this is going to continue to repeat. So our answer is going to be 0.416 with a repeating 6. Go ahead and try the next example on your own, -2/11, and I will give you the answer in just a moment. So pause the video here. The answer for -2/11 should be -0.18, where the 1/8 repeats. So this is an example of a repeating decimal, but sometimes we have 2 or 3 numbers that just continue to repeat over and over, so they can be a little bit trickier to find. Sometimes it's helpful to memorize some fraction conversions. These are just some of the common fractions that you will see that if you already have their decimals memorized, it makes it a little bit easier for you when you're doing math and you are using fractions. So please write down each of these examples. So the first example is 1/2 equals 0.5. Next example is 1/3 is 0.33333, so it's 0.3 repeating. And then we have 1/4, which is 0.25, which if you see that, that looks very similar to money. So 1/4 of a dollar is 25 cents. We also have 1/5, which is 0.2. We have 1/10, which is written just as a tenth, so 0.1, and 1/100th, which is also written as it is read as 0.01. We have 2/3, which is 0.6666 or 0.6 repeating. 3/4 is 0.75 or 75 cents. And 3/5 is 0.6. Comparing fractions and decimals. So the first example is 1/4 and 0.2. So this is where it's helpful to know that the decimal conversion for 1/4 is 0.25. So when we compare those, we have a 2 in both, but we have a 5 in this one, and what would follow this 2 would be a 0, so we would know that 1/4 is greater than 0.20. For the next example, we have 7/8 and 0.87. So we first need to turn 7/8 into a decimal. So we take 7 divided by 8. We're going to add our decimal. So we know that this is 0. 8 goes into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. We get 6 left over. Bring down our 0. 8 goes into 67 times with 56 and 4 left over. We bring down our other 0. So we have 8 goes into 45 times. So our decimal for 7/8 is 0.875. If we compare those, they both have an 8, they both have a 7, but 7/8 has a 5, so we know that 7/8 is greater than 0.87. Pause the video to complete this lesson review. Make sure you show me this along with your notes to receive verification for this video.